Good afternoon. I know it's after lunch, but let's try it again. Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. It is so exciting to see folks here to sort of celebrate with us this milestone in the EMS Agenda 2050 project. I'm John Kramer. I'm the director of the Office of EMS here at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And because all of us are either directly involved or very closely involved in emergency medical services or other public safety disciplines, we'll do a couple of the safety announcements first. If they shut down the HVAC like they did yesterday afternoon because of our close proximity to a fire, or if the fire alarms go off, 2 exits are directly out in either direction. For those folks who are particularly attuned to those things, the AED is directly behind us through the door, past the little scooter that's sitting there. Restrooms are over off to the right and then to the left. And if anybody is looking for a Wi-Fi password, please see Jeremy, and I knew where he was standing a minute ago, but find Jeremy Kinsman and we will fix you up with the Wi-Fi password. As you all know, one of the things that's very helpful in EMS is the ability to be a little bit flexible. So we're going to start out being a little bit flexible with our agenda this afternoon. And I'm going to provide some preliminary or introductory comments in just a couple of minutes. But because of an unexpected schedule conflict, I'd like to introduce very quickly the Deputy Administrator of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Ms. Heidi King. As a profession, EMS is extremely fortunate to have Heidi in the position that she is in. Because even though she has past careers as an economist and policy director and very involved in governmental activities and research and things like that, she started out in public safety. She had a career in law enforcement as a 911 telecommunicator, as an EMT for the Chatham Emergency Squad in New Jersey, with which she was affiliated for several years and was a lieutenant and a crew chief and all sorts of other things. So before she has to very quickly run off to a meeting at a large building in the middle of the district, I'd like to invite our Deputy Administrator, Ms. Heidi King.
Thank you for being here. This means a great deal to me. As John was saying, EMS and the work that we do in EMS is something that is motivating, it's rewarding. Even as a volunteer, I say that it was the best job I ever had, and one of the best, most meaningful pleasures of being at NHTSA is the fact that I'm once again able to work with EMS and contribute in some way. So thank you for making me welcome and that outstanding invitation. I apologize for the schedule change. I had meetings in the White House this morning, and I'll have to run back to the White House on another matter soon. I just came from a meeting with OMB on the 911 grant, so we're working it. We're working it for you. So it's exciting to be here. You know, in addition to EMS, I also worked in dispatch, 911 dispatch. In both of those roles, as most of you know, often the most important contribution we can make is simply listening, simply showing empathy, and making sure that people know that someone is there who can help take care of things. Maybe holding an elderly woman's hand, or comforting a small boy, or in some cases, comforting a wealthy hedge fund trader. I know you know what I'm talking about. Whether that occurs from the communications center or directly with patient and family members, listening and communication is a big part of what we do. We know that the potential of making such a big difference in people's lives, providing patient-centered care that truly matches people with the resources they need, that focuses on outcomes. That's why this vision, EMS Agenda 2050, is so important. It focuses on the patient It focuses on the value we can add to the patient, who should be at the center of all of our decisions. But it also broadens that focus, incorporating patients' family members, their communities, and their providers that are serving them. We must create systems that serve the patient, but also recognizes the sacrifices made by EMS professionals who care for them. We can no longer simply accept that serious injuries, line of duty deaths, post-traumatic stress, and suicide are simply an inherent risk on the job. We can create a system that serves the needs of all individuals, service providers, and patients. So we are excited about the amazing work that's already been accomplished by the hundreds of EMS professionals and the others who participated in and contributed to EMS Agenda 2050. I particularly want to thank the expert panel, the members of the technical expert panel who spent so much time listening to input, reading comments, and debating amongst one another. I know that when we care so deeply about something, sometimes getting the right answer and debating can be even more challenging than if we don't care so much. So thank you for that work, and congratulations on the culmination of nearly 2 years of work. I also want to acknowledge the fantastic team here at NHTSA that make it such a pleasure to come to work together on these issues each and every day. Dr. Kramer, who you've met, and Gam, who was in the back of the room, there he is, and his colleagues. I see Jeremy, for those of you who need Wi-Fi password, we found him. They did a great job on this project and continue on this and other initiatives supporting EMS at the state, local, and national levels, which, as you know, is an interagency exercise as well. I also want to selfishly note that Gam just received the NHTSA Employee of the Quarter recognition for his work on this, among other things. He's always been an outstanding colleague, and it's an honor to it's an honor to learn from his leadership, quite frankly. So, of course, also thank you to our partners at Department of Health and Human Services. I did mention this is an interagency effort in both EMS for Children program and also in the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, also the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Defense, some of whom I'm going to go meet in another context at the White House in my next meeting, and all of the members of FICOMS, the Federal Interagency Committee on EMS, and other federal colleagues who have supported this effort. We recognize this is just the first of the steps in getting us across the finish line. It's a long journey. We're committed to working with you at each step along the road to 2050. On behalf of everyone from NHTSA, and very much from my own heart, thank you for being here today. Thank you for each and everything you do every day. It matters so much to our friends, our neighbors, our communities, our safety, and our nation. The work we do in EMS sews this nation together in a way that I believe is more human, more meaningful in changing and improving the quality of lives than many or maybe most work that we all do. So thank you for being here today, and have a great meeting. So,
Thank you so much, ma'am. Travel safely. As I mentioned, those of us on the NHTSA EMS staff, those of us in the federal interagency that have worked on this project, the folks that were on the administrative support activities and on the technical expert panel are extremely excited that you all have been able to join us today. NHTSA and our partners in the federal government have a long history supporting the advancement of emergency medical services in the country, even going back as far as shortly after the publication of the white paper, Accidental Death and Disability, the Neglected Disease of Modern Society, in 1966. A major part of that history revolves around the 1996 project that included the development and then the publication of the EMS Agenda for the Future, a project that was co-sponsored with our folks at the EMS for Children's program. I'm very proud and was honored to be able to participate in that original project. At that time, as an emergency physician, as an EMS medical director, and coincidentally, at the end of it, as the president of the National Association of EMS Physicians. We're not going to talk about how old that makes me, because I actually remember when the original white paper was published. But I am not the oldest EMS or former EMS provider in the room. We'll talk about that in just a minute or two. I joined NHTSA a little over 2 years ago now, just before this project kicked off. Over those 2 years, the members of the technical expert panel have worked extremely hard, extremely diligently to gather as many ideas and as much input as they could. I've watched them gather input at regional meetings, at conferences, during individual conversations with folks, on the telephone, really to bring all these ideas from the EMS community together and develop a vision that will now inspire our colleagues moving forward in the EMS community the way the 1996 Agenda for the Future inspired EMS folks at that time. Those of you that are here at the meeting have received a pre-publication draft copy. We have to clarify it as that because it's still going through formal review and agency clearance. But it's our expectation that the document will be released to the general community, hopefully. Actually, GAM told me that I could not say a specific time frame, so I'm not going to say hopefully within the next month or so, but hopefully in the relatively near future, we will be releasing it for general circulation. Today we have the opportunity to listen to some really great folks talk about both the project and where we go from here. Members of the technical expert panel will be talking about various aspects of the program, or various aspects of the project. A project that takes us from the 1996 vision of a patient-centered EMS system to what now will evolve into a people-centered EMS system. And we'll talk about the distinction of that in just a couple of minutes. You know, we've referred to this as an implementation forum, and the goal today is not to solely talk about what the project was like and what the Agenda 2050 document is, but to start laying the foundation on how we take advantage of those activities and that document to implement changes now that will turn the vision in the document into a reality. In addition to the participation that we've had of the Office of EMS, of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, as we've alluded to several times, our interagency federal partners are very critical to being able to have a successful activity like this. I'd now like to invite up Dr. Kevin Yeske, who is the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, ASPR. Kevin is an emergency physician by background. He has dedicated his entire career really to emergency care, EMS, preparedness, and disaster response activities. Dr. Yeske.
Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting us to be part of this celebration. This is a great time, and as we in ASPR perform our functions of preparing the federal government and coordinating federal government medical resources to respond to disasters, recover from disasters, and prepare for disasters, it's important for us to be here to see this and be part of this event, because those of us in ASPR think that EMS has to be an integral part of our solution set. And being able to effectively prepare our communities for disasters and to respond to disasters. EMS plays a central role in that. I'd like to thank NHTSA and particularly the Office of EMS and John for his leadership in advancing EMS causes and making sure that we're addressing the EMS issues as we move forward. I think it's been a great relationship working with John and his team as we move forward on FICOMs, as we've talked about disaster response, how to improve that, how to improve EMS in general as we move forward. So again, thanks, John, for your outstanding leadership. As I said, ASPR coordinates the federal resources for disaster preparedness, response, and recovery for the federal government. And we work with partners like Department of Transportation, DOD, and VA, as well as our components within HHS to include CDC, Food and Drug Administration, even organizations like Centers for Medicare, Medicaid Services, who play an integral piece of disaster response. We're looking forward now as we have new leadership in ASPR with Bob Cadlick, who's our Assistant Secretary. We're becoming and trying to make a transition to be more operational in what we do. We have a policy piece in ASPR, but our focus is on the operations side, making sure that the patients who have been in a disaster area get the care that they need in the time that they need it. And that's a challenge. And there's no question that's a challenge, but we're moving to look at ways to improve that response time and making sure that our locals are prepared to handle as much of it as they can and then use our federal resources to augment what they have in place. And we've seen that in the recent responses to the 4 hurricanes, including Florence, that's still ongoing. We've seen a lot of EMAC operations where North Carolina, South Carolina have brought in resources from outside their states, from other states, to support that, to include some EMS assets. But the other piece is we're preparing for 21st century threats. We're pretty confident that we can handle the typical hurricane, the standard thing. But we're looking at 21st century threats that are catastrophic, that overwhelm or significantly damage our healthcare system, and in ways that disrupt patterns of referral, standards of care, and things like that. And trying to prepare our states and locals. And if you think back a couple of weeks ago when that plane landed at JFK Airport, I don't know if anyone here is from New York, plane landed at JFK Airport with reports from the pilots that there were 100 people who had respiratory symptoms, sick with respiratory symptoms, that sets off certain flares that, this could be something that we have to intervene in. And if you looked at the New York City response and the airport response, it was a federal response from the quarantine folks at the airport. It was airport staff. It was EMS who played an outstanding role, and the hospital system that was prepared to take, I think they ended up taking 15 or 16 patients. That's what we're looking for. But imagine if that was something that was Ebola or something that was a highly pathogenic infectious disease, how we would handle that. And we need systems that are prepared to do that and work beyond the day-to-day activities that they do to perform at a higher level, in an integrated level, across the response spectrum. Okay, so we need that, and that's what we're looking for. So in ASPR, as we look forward to what we need to have, one of our key components is building a regional disaster response health system. And again, a system that doesn't interrupt, doesn't change the day-to-day patterns of healthcare, but if there's a catastrophic event that damages the healthcare system or overwhelms the healthcare system, we have the ability to get patients the care they need when they need it. And it builds on our hospital preparedness program. It's a grant program that HHS has that provides funds to healthcare coalitions, in sub-state coalitions, to work together in an integrated way to respond to healthcare needs. So it's, the regional disaster healthcare system is built on that, but it goes beyond that. It builds regional capability, builds regional situational awareness, it builds regional sharing of resources, it tries to break down the jurisdictional boundaries that prevent us from crossing state lines in a meaningful way to respond to our neighbors and maybe impair patient care. and we're looking for ways to have a system that is accountable and responsible in that process. So it's a tiered system that patients get kicked up through to, finally, if they need it, levels or centers of excellence that can provide the care that those patients need. And EMS plays an important role in that. In our hospital preparedness program, our definition of a coalition is 2 or more hospitals, emergency management, public health, and EMS. So we want to bring EMS into that system. But unfortunately, since we started a coalition a couple years ago, we have about 25–30% participation from EMS in our coalitions. We need to get that to 100%. And so that's our vision as we build the RDHRS forward and build on those coalitions, that EMS plays an important role in that. And so the integration, and again, we enjoy the partnership that we have with Department of Transportation and the work we've done together thus far. As we look to the future, we want to make sure that we can help you implement your vision for EMS and support that vision, and then in return have that vision support what we're trying to do to build regional systems of care that can give Americans the care they need in the face of some pretty significant threats, to include infectious disease, earthquakes, nuclear threat, all those things that we all worry about. We need that cohesiveness and that integration. So again, congratulations on the launch of this blueprint for the future. We look forward to being part of that, and look forward to continued interactions and good relationships. So thanks, John.
Thank you. And thanks for your participation and help. One of the other federal partners that is really wonderful to work with are our partners at the HHS HRSA Office of Emergency Medical Services for Children's program. My apologies for stumbling on that. It's now my pleasure to invite the director of that program, Teresa Morrison-Canada, to come up and join us for a few minutes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to say thank you. Congratulations to the EMS Agenda for the Future Technical Expert Panel, the project team, Red Horse for their work, NHTSA's Office of EMS, our friends, and our federal partners, as well as the leadership in the EMS field that have engaged in the project through multiple venues. Discussions between the federal partners regarding this project began more than 3 years ago, so this is pretty quick how far we've come. When HRSA EMSC was invited to discuss this project in 2015, EMSC saw this as an opportunity to collaborate with NHTSA, our federal partners to further expand and improve emergency medical services for children with an injury and critical illness requiring emergency care. So as you can see, we were very selfish about our reasons for wanting to partner with NHTSA again. This is and was recognized immediately by HRSA as a very important project that needed support and our engagement as one of several agencies serving EMS. As you know, HRSA's EMSC program has a clear mandate that microscopically focuses in on children in the emergency medical services system. Thus, engagement in this project assured representation of pediatric considerations where most appropriate while exploring the global needs of EMS. I believe the vision document did just that, as it evolved into a people-centered EMS vision that encompasses the needs of the family unit. The methodology used to manage this project while ensuring federal, national, and public engagement was very impressive. Thank you for allowing discussions that engaged feedback from EMS subject matter experts through the duration of the project, as it also allowed for deliberations and discussion regarding the needs of pediatric patients. As a result of FICOM's vision, and NHTSA's leadership to convene experts and allow time to visualize an improved EMS system. We look forward to future efforts to implement the vision, and we are anxious to look back in 5, 10, 15 years to see how much further the field has come to improving delivery and quality of care for all those that we serve. Thank you. EMSC looks forward to further engagement in the project.
Thank you, T. If the first panel and Mike Tagman would like to come forward, it's not my pleasure to, I'll introduce Mike and let him take it from there, but folks in EMS know of Michael Tagman. Mike, we were fortunate on the project in that Mike was selected to be the facilitator, which is the official way of saying that he was the ringleader and kept everybody together, on task, and moving forward. And when we say together, not only the staff that was working with you and the technical expert panel, but everybody that participated in the regional meetings and the various conferences. So, Michael, thank you.
Thank you. Afternoon, everybody. How many of you have a Glasgow in the double digits? How many of you did not understand that question? We get the clinicians and separate folks out here a little bit. It's really been an honor and, quite frankly, a ton of fun to be part of this project. We essentially had the task of inspiring the entire EMS profession to dream and explore ideas at the edge of their awareness, at the edge of what's going on today, to try to craft this vision for the future. And our federal sponsors have been fabulous. They said, well, this is a federal project that is a collaboration between a number of federal agencies that you've all heard from this morning. They really wanted this to be a project that was of, for, and by the EMS profession as a whole, so that at the end of the day that this is a document that was really written by the EMS profession. And I think that the group has accomplished that. We used a process that we called radical inclusion and deep listening. So we got input from really thousands of people in all corners of the EMS world. And the technical expert panel, which is a truly remarkable group of folks, you're going to hear from all of them today. They are the embodiment of deep listening, of really serious contemplation about things that mattered. They were fierce debaters several times during the course of this, but I think they've really come together with the industry as a whole to craft something that we all feel proud of, feel like it's a bold view going forward. And we're going to start with listening to 4 of them today. We've got Dr. Bill Leggio here, who's an assistant professor at Creighton University and also runs the paramedic program there. We've got Kira Neely King, who is a lieutenant with the Fire Department of New York City and probably has the coolest job in the EMS world. If you can pull her off to the side and get her to tell you what she did in the last week, it's always a very interesting experience. We have Derek Bernstein, who is the chief of the Rockford, Illinois Fire Department, and has recently been doing some pretty interesting stuff in the federal level and a couple of other projects. And
has the coolest job.
what's that? He actually has the coolest job, you think? All right. And then we've got Dr. Kevin Munjal, who is an emergency physician, an EMS physician, and the associate director of pre-hospital care for the Mount Sinai Medical Center, and was also the principal investigator, one of the co-principal investigators on the EMS Innovations Project. So to start us off, Bill, will you share with the group some about the process that was used to build this agenda?
Sure will. Thank you, Mike. As Mike alluded, I am spending the next few minutes to kind of talk about the process. And as he alluded, to recognize the energy that he brought to this process, it was radical inclusion. And I was very impressed when he started talking about dialogue as written by David Bohm, who was a physicist that wrote about it. It was nice to meet someone else that has also read that book. So I didn't know there was 2 of us out there. But you know, we were really tasked with, as a TEP, as a facilitator of the process, and a lot of that was within the regional meetings. And going into the regional meetings, and there was 4 of them, first in Silver Spring, Maryland, and it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but it was a few years. We were tasked with trying to elicit input and feedback and vision of what we as a collective profession was looking towards with 2050. Part of that was, of course, we heard about today's problems, and the document really was not intended and is not intended to necessarily address today's problems. If we did that, then that would not do justice to a visionary document looking 30-some years down the road to 2050. With that, though, there was a lot of passion that was really fueling those debates and discussions. And it was really capturing why we as a profession have such a strong sense of passion. And I think all of us would agree that EMS, we really have a strong sense of purpose of who we are as individuals, clinicians, and professionals. And so those were the things that we, in our questions, in our groups, and roundtable, World Cafe dialogue, that's what we were really trying to capture and then bring to the second day meeting where it was largely the TEP, sharing what we heard from the profession, and really trying to draw on principles that are rooted in those elements of things that we're passionate about in EMS and as providers. Throughout the process of the regional meetings, there was a few straw man documents, and those were not mini agendas or anything like that. They were really just to kind of help frame some discussion points, some things to think about, and some of it was just throw it out there and see how people react, and so on. Yes, there was only 4 regional meetings, but there was a strong web presence. And so we did receive a lot of written feedback through the website, and that was often distributed every few weeks, especially leading up to the regional meetings for us to reflect on. 71 organizational liaisons participated in the process. A lot of organizations pushed this out to their membership, and there was involvement through those channels. And then I think certainly we as TEP members took it upon ourselves to discuss and communicate about the project on our own through our own social media channels, our own organizations, and at our own state and local levels. So it was, I think we really were very inclusive. There was lots of ways to participate, even if you were not able to travel, but certainly to get on the internet and provide feedback. We were very receptive to everything, read everything, hundreds of pages on Excel, but it was well worth it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Derek, would you walk us through the people-centered aspect of this document?
Sure would. When we first came together at the beginning of this project, it was almost 2 years ago, and it was in this very building. We spent approximately 2 days working together and coming up with some of the biggest issues facing our profession. It was a great reminder to all of us that the issues that we face aren't only specific to one organization, it's across the board from all the aspects of what size your agency is, what geography, and where you come from. And I think we can still relate, I could personally relate to the colleagues in our group that were medical directors, came from rural communities, big cities such as New York City, of some of the challenges that we have, retaining qualified personnel, recruiting them, what medical directors in major metropolitan systems, we're talking about barriers to innovation, and what things we could do to enhance and make EMS a more encompassing profession going into the future. Some of these common themes that came out through our discussions was that we need to reorient our plans and policies to be more focused around people, not just the patients. That includes the responders and everyone that has to deal with how they're treated. And one thing that we really focus on is the families of the responders, the families of the patients, to be all-encompassing, to make sure we include all of them. And one thing that we really wanted to focus on is take care of the EMS professionals that are always there to serve. And I know some of our initial people that talked about what the emergency responders see on a daily basis. We know what trauma comes from that. We need to make sure that we really encompass and we address what the EMS professionals need. We debated many of the topics for the EMS agenda at length. Some of them were very heated and passionate because we were very concerned and we really truly enjoy this profession. But the one thing that we all agreed on is to be people-centered. And I think that really became evident in day 2 of our discussions here and what we have a framework for our document going forward. So what is a people-centered EMS system? It's one that focuses on the outcomes defined not just by clinicians and researchers, but by the individuals in the communities we serve. Everyone has a voice in what they want to see as in the outcomes. It's a system where barriers and turf battles don't interfere with what's doing right. Now, I'm sure everyone's thinking that would be great, but that's what our vision is, that we don't have those turf battles, that we're focused on the patient, the family, and the responders. And one where we uphold the great traditions of our profession and moving on with past practices from our providers, with keeping their health and safety at risk in our utmost concern. In order to achieve this vision, we need everyone involved in EMS, from the basic provider, EMS systems, local officials, medical directors, clinicians, and federal partners to use these guiding principles of the EMS Agenda 2050 into your decision process at every level to make this vision a reality. One thing we were talking about before, that some of us are kind of sad that this is coming to an end, and we are quickly informed that this is not the end, this is the beginning. This is where we're relying on everybody that's here today, everybody that's watching live streaming, that we're going to take these principles back to our own organization all throughout the entire country and make them a reality. And I am truly grateful to be part of this process, and I'm really looking forward to the outcomes that will come from this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Kira, would you walk us through the first three of the guiding principles?
Sure. Thank you so much. This day is really exciting for all of us. It seems like just yesterday we were here for our first meeting, and it brings me joy to say that I was sitting next to Derek then. I got to introduce him to the class. It was very exciting. In any event, I will be presenting the first three principles. First, EMS of the future will be inherently safe and effective. A people-centered EMS system strives to do no harm. No harm to patients, to community members or EMS professionals, and it's a system based on evidence and science. It has continuous measurement and improvement in order to achieve patient and community-centered outcomes. We can probably think of ways that in today's world we are not adhering to this, whether it's lack of hand hygiene or safety reporting or medical protocols that don't follow evidence-based guidelines. But there are opportunities to move ourselves forward and to learn from what we're doing now, and that's what the agenda is about, to build on what we have to change the future. It's all about us, I guess. Next, by 2050, EMS will be integrated and seamless. While technology is a major piece of this puzzle, it only serves to facilitate the system. The education, communication, and collaboration between all the partners will serve as the foundation of being integrated and seamless. EMS clinicians and system leaders will receive rapid feedback, and based on that feedback, including patient outcome information and patient data from the healthcare continuum, we'll be able to improve not only patient outcome along the line, but the quality of health care, and it also affects those providers, like being able to follow a patient from beginning to end and knowing what your care did over time serves as a continuing education piece as well. EMS data inform decisions, and it informs decisions made not only by EMS, but also in other areas of the community, and to support health, population health and preparedness. And I don't know why I'm saying I have it all right here. Might as well try reading. Interprofessional education systems will prepare EMS professionals and their healthcare colleagues to work, to learn, to train, and together better respond as a unified team. Because when we're all on the same page, everyone benefits, especially the patients and the healthcare community, which is to something Derek was speaking about, to provide for the providers. And my third principle, this is like the alarms and the fires and all that, I can handle that. This, I'm a little...
You're doing well.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. EMS of the future will be reliable and prepared. You can call us EMS preppers. I sense a reality television opportunity coming on. In many ways, EMS systems will struggle to be reliable and prepared, but it's up to us as professionals to commit ourselves to creating a truly reliable and prepared system that serves all communities. Communities will be served by fully staffed EMS systems that prioritize the provision of out-of-hospital unscheduled care. They'll ensure the availability of safe and educated and highly capable clinicians, managers, and physicians. Licensed EMS clinicians are granted the privilege to practice across the country, with all EMS professionals able to practice at the level their education prepares them for. This education of EMS clinicians reflects the practice in the field and prepares them to take care of patients in any environment. It also gives them opportunity to seek education in specialized areas that not only benefits the patient in the field, but moves us along a career path and to greater academic success and greater psychological success from having that educational cadre. Regional systems of disaster medical care ensure appropriate resource allocation and organization of resources during a major incident in the future. In short, the real-time and historic data that we'll be able to use in the future to predict or immediately respond to emergencies will change the system, being able to have that one-page look and have everyone have access to it will be truly system changing. Through planning, education, leadership, and communication, we will ensure the entire nation in the future is protected. Again, thank you for this opportunity, and it has been just a joy to be part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, you want to bring us home with the last three of the principles?
Thank you, everyone. I have the privilege of presenting the next three guiding principles. The fourth of these principles was that EMS of the future will be socially equitable. This was an interesting one for us because not everyone we spoke with immediately understood or recognized the disparities that currently exist. Nonetheless, most of the people we engaged with were able to come to appreciate its importance, and the technical expert panel is proud to be united behind the goal of a socially equitable EMS system. It is our vision that in 2050, the setting where a person receives care, whether urban, rural, or in between, has little impact on the quality of care they receive or on patient outcomes. In 2050, people of all ages, including pediatric and geriatric patients, receive consistent, high-quality EMS care. And in 2050, the most effective and efficient care is available to individuals regardless of their health status, race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status, or other social determinants. The fifth principle is that we strive for EMS of the future to be sustainable and efficient. This is a key building block for the future of EMS. So much of our hopes and dreams for what EMS could be relies on EMS finding ways to work both sustainably and efficiently towards that future. Thus, it is our hope in 2050 that EMS is a well-supported, essential service in communities across the nation. In 2050, EMS systems have the resources they require to provide care in a fiscally responsible, sustainable framework that appropriately compensates clinicians. And efficient EMS systems provide value to the community by focusing on improving outcomes at the lowest cost. The sixth principle is that, and the last of our guiding principles, is that EMS of the future will be adaptable and innovative. This guiding principle, I think, builds upon each of the other five guiding principles. It demands us to always look forward and make sure that we are continually evolving. Our vision is that in 2050, EMS systems are able to quickly and effectively adapt to meet the evolving needs of their communities. In 2050, EMS organizations foster a culture of innovation and continuously evaluate new technologies, system designs, and other opportunities. In 2050, innovative organizations are encouraged to test new ideas in a safe and systematic way that implement effective new programs. Thank you again for giving me the honor and privilege of being part of this great team. And also want to thank Mike Taigman for his great leadership and facilitation in this project. And Mike Gerber, who I realize is not on the agenda, but did so much work for this great team.
Absolutely. Thank you. So what questions do you have? I know some of you who go to federal meetings are used to public comment periods. The public comment period here is to put your hand up and we'll bring a microphone around to you. We've got, who's got a question for the panel? I'll get us started while a couple of you are thinking about things here. You know, when we describe a vision, it implies that there's a gap between what the vision is and how things are today. So, you know, what thoughts do you have about kind of the space between what you see today in comparison to the vision that we've created? Any thoughts from any of you?
I think in general, I mean, there are some gaps and some work to be done. I think some of what is discussed in this agenda is current and contemporary topics in research and evidence-based medicine and academic medicine. But there are silos, and we have to start breaking down those silos. And one theme that is in the document is that EMS is an interprofessional discipline, and it is going to take that interprofessional work of, it's not just EMS alone, but it's our partners in public safety and our partners in medicine to drive a lot of this. It's our hope that the principles help guide and influence decisions that as we all take individual responsibilities to implement this vision, that those principles help guide and influence our actions.
Any other thoughts from any of you?
I would comment one of the biggest gaps that see personally as far as not the dedication or commitment to prevention, it's more on the treatment, that we all know in the field that if you dedicated resources to the prevention side, that you would keep people out of the hospital emergency room, and it's hard to justify a negative to insurance companies or to how our system's set up. That one of the things that we had a very lengthy discussion is our whole system's set up to respond, not to prevent. And I think that's one thing that, you know, being people-centered, that would really drive us towards focusing more on the prevention side and keeping people out of the access of the emergency room or to a hospital.
Great. Any other thoughts?
Self-care renaissance,
What's that?
in a sense, that the renaissance of self-care. We want people to prevent, and then there would be no need for EMS. Ha ha ha. There will always be a need for us, which is good, not only from the point of job safety, but that goal to have people take more ownership in their health and be more informed, combined with the use of technology to allow the people, when they do need care, to look at a whole history instead of this acute incident, will change healthcare. People will receive better care, and it will be more streamlined, more efficient.
Nice. Good. Questions from the group yet? Not seeing any hands go up yet. Let me ask you, what's something that surprised you most over the last couple of years of this project?
That people think I have a New York accent.
I would say I think that there was, you know, when we were able to elevate the conversation above sort of the challenges of today or the turf wars that were alluded to, that there was a lot of agreement about where EMS needs to go. I think on 80–90% of the things in this document, there wasn't a huge amount of controversy I think we know where we need to go as an industry. I think advocates for patients, for physicians, for providers, for educators, we all have a lot of commonalities to our vision. And so if we can find ways to kind of get through some of the things that kind of blind us from looking at the future because they're right in front of us, I think there's real opportunity for us to evolve.
One thing I kind of remember from the process is the question about joy and finding joy in EMS. And I think part of that was, the question was about joy in work. And I think for a lot of us in EMS, we don't really view this as work. We view this kind of as our calling and it's our passion. And why should we have joy in that when you're passionate about it and it's your sense of purpose? So I think that was a good question that got a weird reaction, but it also, I think, highlighted some of the best qualities of EMS personnel and providers.
It was surprising that the reaction to the joy question was not usually joy, but
It was amazing how much it angered people to be asked about joy in the workplace. But,
but it did bring out their passion, which, to Bill's point, was a very nice byproduct.
Good. I have one question here.
My question is, did you have trouble figuring out how high to reach? Did you have trouble separating EMS future from possible EMS science fiction when you're thinking about 2050?
Good question. So the question, for those of you that didn't hear it, is did you have a problem separating EMS vision for the future from EMS science fiction and going too far? Is that the essence of your question? Yeah. How do you make that distinction? Go ahead.
Well, if you could first give your premise for what you said every time we started off our sessions.
What's it, to think Jetsonian and not Flintstonian, which
Correct.
was Dan Mance and Ted Delbridge and Rick Martinez. Their advice to us at the beginning was to push the edges. Yep.
I think, to your question, one thing that when we first began, we got into the technical part or more specifics, and I think one thing that that brought us up to that higher level of thinking of things that would really be attainable is really focus on the people, and that's where that main vision came from, is being people-centered. Don't worry about what technology, how that evolves or what changes, but if you really focus on how you're treating the people, the patients, the family, and all the responders, that's where we really focus our energy on. I think that really supports the guiding principles. But we did have times where we kind of got caught up in some of that technology that we thought we had to have this to move on to this. But when you step back and you look that we really need to be people-centered, that really resonated and put us back where we needed to be, back on track. I hope that answers your question.
I would just add that on the tech point, when we asked that question, got a lot of feedback and reflected on it, I kind of always ask myself, are we going to drive the technology or is the technology going to drive us? And, for any fellow educators, I kind of have the same question with simulation. Are we getting what we need out of simulation or is simulation telling us what we need? And I kind of think that's the relationship and balance that is going to be a challenge in the future.
But tech, along with healthcare, is not going away. And no matter what technology we have, I think the power in it lies in harnessing that information, and that being handled, patient care can only improve because we have more time and more capacity to provide it. We're providing it now, but using that technology to handle the part that is not that human relationship gives us more time and more passion for the person, the patient.
And we did try not to rein in the limits too far. I mean, drones, pre-hospital ultrasound, stroke ambulances are going to be in the ancient museum in 30 years, right? They're going to be in the dusty old corner of old technology by the time 2050 rolls around. So, got time for one more question, John?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. John Washko with Northwell Health in New York. Wanted to find out if first off, I want to say thank you to everybody because I think this is great work and you guys did an amazing job. And I was part of Radical Inclusion and I loved it. But one of the questions is, does the panel have any guidance or wisdom associated with now going forward and executing on this vision? And I'm curious about your input of how we move this agenda forward now and actually make it a reality.
For me, I have an entire career to do it. I'm just kind of kidding. I think we as the TEP have really accepted the responsibility to kind of help get that going with, some follow-up publications and things like that. But ultimately, it's going to be getting involved, all of us, on our boards and associations, and really, pushing this and making sense of it and advocating for it. I think it's going to take a lot of work of us collectively.
So our answer is you. You're the answer. All of you, though. All of you will be involved in going home and moving this forward, because the answer is all of us. We are the future. You have a longer future because you're much younger than me, but
That's right.
it's all of you. All of us.
Good.
I would say you can start implementing some of these guiding principles right now into any organization, as far as, teaching all your medics or EMTs to focus on not the patient but the family, and for organizations to really put interest in and resources to taking care of your responders, because they definitely need the assistance. There are some organizations doing it, but it's not countrywide, and I think that's where we can really focus our energy, and those items can take place right now. We don't have to have any legislation or funding from outside sources. You can take care of that from within your own organization to advance these principles forward.
And
Good.
small steps as well. Like, one of the first things we spoke about when we met is in Rockford, Illinois, you have pharmacists come to the patient's family and explain what they're taking and why they're taking it. So you don't have, moving forward, you don't have as much of a recurrence of, I take a heart pill, a stomach pill, and that. Like, it was mind-blowing, because I'm like, that's so simple, and that's something Kevin works with as well, with community paramedicine and community medicine. It's that little ounce of prevention. It's amazing to have a more informed public, and that's such a small thing, and it's outreach is so key.
It's great.
If I could just offer one last thought, which is that it kind of blends an answer to the last question as well. The technology, the science fiction that's in this document is kind of primarily in the narrative, whereas those guiding principles and the sub-bullets beneath them, we strove, I don't know if we met this target, but we strove for each of those things to be true regardless of which way the technology goes. And if we use those guiding principles and can bring them back into our own organization, try to make sure that our culture is consistent with those, I think it really sets us up on the right path. And then I'd also give a shout out to the Promoting Innovations in EMS project, which kind of has a handful of very short-term, immediate, and medium-term recommendations that I think helped inform this document, and I think are very consistent with the guiding principles.
Thank you very much. And before I turn it back over to Dr. Kramer, I just wanted to recognize particularly the Red Horse Corporation and the Red Flash Group, which were really the hardcore working project management folks. We got Sherry in the back here, Keith, and where did Michael run off to? Michael's running around back there somewhere, Michael Gerber. There he is. Have done a monumental amount of work to bring this all together and make it a reality. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Kramer. Thank you.
Thank you all. Pardon me. As we were brainstorming about an individual that we could invite to give the keynote address, we wanted to identify somebody who was knowledgeable in EMS, knew a lot about healthcare, was innovative and visionary, and knew the answers to all of the future questions. We nailed it with Mr. Bill Atkinson. Even though Bill is probably most recognized over the last several decades of dedicating his professional career to hospitals and healthcare systems development, his heart has always been in EMS. He started in EMS in the mid-1970s as one of the first EMTs in North Carolina, working with the Rockingham County EMS agency. He then became their training chief. A few years after that, he became one of the first paramedics in North Carolina. certification, which, by the way, he continues to maintain. Okay, so mid-70s to past the mid-2000 teens, and worked with Guilford County EMS. He sort of switched focus a little bit then and started to focus more on healthcare administration, working for the Humana Corporation with hospitals in South Carolina, Texas, and Colorado. Then returned to North Carolina as the president and CEO of the New Hanover Regional Medical Center. In 2003, he took the same positions, but transferred his location to WakeMed Health and Hospitals in Raleigh, being responsible for a number of hospitals, a very large healthcare system, a level 1 trauma center, but also an EMS system, and continued to be involved in efforts to improve pre-hospital care through WakeMed. In December 2004, when Dr. Don Berwick, who is now, and I always get the official name wrong, Institute for Healthcare Improvement, was establishing a quality improvement project. It was called the 100 Million Lives Campaign, focusing on reducing preventable deaths in America's hospitals. Bill was the only hospital CEO that initially participated in that project. Today, although officially retired, I guess, sort of, kind of, maybe, he continues to work with healthcare organizations to help them innovate, collaborate, and improve and move things forward, but continues to always incorporate and involve EMS in those activities. It is my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Bill Atkinson.
Appreciate it. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for being here. What a great space. I have spent a lifetime loving the Department of Transportation for what they've done in EMS, and believe it or not, this is my first time ever in their building. But I've written about you for years, for generations, in fact. You know, I think the question that was posed to me, and I didn't come up with the question, was what about patient-centered care? And I'd like to say in EMS and across my healthcare career, I probably start every morning and finish every day saying, what did we do for the people we were here to help today? And it didn't matter whether it was EMS or the emergency department or the operating rooms or the trauma center or the children's hospital. What did we do for the people we're here to serve? Most importantly, what did we do to keep them out of this place? Because hospitals are there when the system fails, for the most part. And that's quite a career booster when you have that attitude and you're in hospitals. You know, what we do here is important. What happens in this building and the buildings before this for the Department of Transportation were important. Because as you know, this effort began on the question about highway safety. And look at the progress we've made in that space. Even as a street medic, I can tell you the barriers that were built, the bridges that were protected, you all have been there and seen it. Car safety in this nation, go on down that list, and then realize that DOT, because they were doing the right things, ended up impacting cardiac care and stroke care, and go on down the list, disaster response. Congratulations for a job well done, and especially outside your barnyard, out on the entire farm to make it great. You know, when I told my middle son said to me the other day, and he's past college age, he said, where are you going this week? He knew I was packing. I said, I'm going to Washington, and I'm going to give a talk at a meeting that's working on the question of EMS in 2050. And without missing a beat, and certainly without thinking, he said, well, you won't be here then. Well, okay. But you know, the greatness about being a human being versus any other species on this earth is we are born with the ability to talk about what comes after we're here. And that is a very amazing quality that you find in no other species. They live for the minute, they live for the time in front of them. We, in a great country that has lived for what comes next. And you see the mistakes that can come from that, but more importantly, in this city and other cities like it, you can see what works well, including in EMS. There was a fire yesterday of some significance, four-alarm fire about a block from here, and when I was getting to town, you could see the smoke covering the city. It looked like a plane had hit something to me when you first came in, and it was impressive to see the smoke. And it ended up a four-alarm fire in a fairly new structure down the road that had been built for the elderly. And it started somewhere in the roof line when you look at the pictures on the news last night. And it's a building that had had recent fire alarm inspections and stuff, and everything worked. And as they noted last night, they don't put fire alarms in the roof line because that's not where fires usually start. Now, some places do require that. This building apparently did not. And the result was that you ended up this four-alarm fire with everybody involved down there and bringing out elderly patients because there was no fire alarm, and the building was significantly involved on the top floors. On the news last night, there were some Marines from this space, because they went directly from here down, who had gone inside and done some rescue work, as did others. And when they mentioned to the Marine, well, it was brave of you all to do this, and thank you, he said, it's our job. It's what we do, is what he said. Well, you know, I wish somebody would thank you every day, and I will today, for thanking you for what you do. But at the end of the day, it's our job to get this right. It's not an option. It's not your, today I'll get it right, maybe tomorrow I won't. It is your absolute obligation, or get out of the field. We don't need people who are passing through. We need people that when they're here are 100% committed to getting it right, not for themselves, but getting it right for the people they serve. Do we agree on that? And that's what this discussion should be about. There was an article in U.S. News and World Report just about 2 weeks ago called The Loneliness Effect. And it was about the fact that loneliness, especially in the elderly, can be a killer as seriously as heart disease or other diseases. Just the question that if you're without others to communicate with and really live a life with, it shortens your lifespan. And they claim there's evidence to prove that. And I'll just say, since I'm mentioning in a speech in Washington, I haven't seen that evidence, but I'll take it from what I've seen over time that that's probably true. I'd like to see the data. But I'm going to tell you the same thing has been a factor in EMS and emergency services. The loneliness effect of being in silos is dangerous to your health. As an agency, as a career, as a profession, as an industry, as healthcare providers, as rescuers, when you operate in silos, and when you live in a space where claiming to be the best but not worried about what your neighbors do is the way you operate, you are not helping the future of emergency service and life-saving in this nation. Your responsibility, by default, is across city lines, state lines, national lines. If you haven't been to England to see how they do things in a national health market like they do there for primary care, and you're talking about, community health paramedicine here, which is so important, but you haven't been to see how they've been doing it for 20 years, you're reinventing the wheel. Go see how a place that does that, and does it well. This is a global issue. I have the great honor of having as one of my mentors in my career, Jim Page. He sort of adopted me very early on when he came to North Carolina as the first chief of the North Carolina Office of EMS. I was beginning time as a student at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro then, and in the first paramedic class in the state with Guilford County EMS, many of the people in that program were college students, which was different than EMS at that time to begin with. But Jim Page went on to impact much of what I did in my life. I remember when I spoke at his funeral not too many years ago, and I wish he was here, but when I spoke at his funeral, I said, there's just no way you could measure what this man did to this industry, or for this industry, and for this field. And there are many of other people who have passed and have gone on, many that are here today you could say the same thing about. Progress is about people. It's about people who take risk. It's about people who step up and do the right thing simply because it's the right thing. And sometimes you lose your job like doing that, as did Jim Page in North Carolina, because he squared off with the volunteer rescue squads that were in charge. And you know what the real factor was at that time? It got solved: illiteracy. because many people in the rescue squads, especially in rural areas, did not know how to read and write. And as Jim taught me when I was a college student and would go listen to him, he said, you want to know who they are? When we go to visit a place, and you come with me a couple of times, they're going to be ones that have a pocket full of pencils and pens. It's masking behavior. And he was right. You'd go there and be somebody, and they wouldn't have, scissors on their waist. They'd have 4 pens in their pocket. They could not read and write. And they went politically to the governor and said, well, we don't want to take a written test to do this. We'll study, but we're not going to take a written test. And Jim Page said, you will take a written test because you have to read and write to be able to handle patients and to know what medications they're on. It cost him his job. He said it was the greatest thing that ever happened to him because he found at Jim's and a dozen of other things, and he went on to do fairly well in the world thereafter as an attorney. But the reality is he squared off in the loneliness factor that I talk about in an environment where people working in silos, their importance, whatever that was higher than the importance of the mission at hand. And these were good people. But when you live in a rural community and you stay in that rural community and you're the only one who can have a pager go off in your church, let's say in a Baptist church in the South, and you get to get up and walk out during a sermon, you are somebody. You understand that? It's about social position. And it is important for rescuers, firefighters, and the men and women who are in firefighting and in rescue and in police and all of the public safety areas to be recognized for what they do. But if you're recognized as a lifesaver and through your own actions you're not in the best position to save lives and prevent injury, it's a false promise. It's morally wrong, it's operationally wrong, it's economically wrong, it's just dumb. You have to have a system that recognizes that anyone is welcome to be part of this process we call emergency medical services, including people that don't read and write, because you can teach them CPR. You can do things like that. There's a place for everyone at the table, but as the skill set rises and the quality of the decision making impacts life or limb or cost in this era, it has to be someone who has a broad enough education and a broad enough experience that they're not a technician, but they're a thinker across lines, including what happens after they get to the hospital. If you can't calculate by going to the wrong hospital for the wrong thing, i.e. stroke, and you deliver someone who's unable to handle the type of stroke you take, you in essence dooming that person perhaps to their life, to their functionality, and you sure as heck are dooming them to a hospital bill that's could be higher than probably the cost of their house. So you have to be able to think beyond the technical checklists about the decisions you make. And you say, well, what if my chief's not like that? Get a new chief. It happens. I've fired a few people in my career. It can happen if your heart's not in the right place. We mentioned Don Berwick. That morning down in Florida, when Don Berwick was going to announce the 100,000 Lives campaign in the beginning of the declaration that we were killing people in American hospitals, I believe that's the language we used that morning. Bill Pulley, who was the president of the North Carolina Hospital Association, and I, as the chairman of the Hospital Association and the North Carolina Institute of Medicine that year, was the sole person there with, we were the sole 2 people there with Don, and then there was a nurse and a couple of other people to stand up and say, quite honestly, we're killing people in American hospitals. We didn't pull punches. We said, this is what's happening, and we're going to do something about it. It was Don's dream. I was just there as the guy to push the punch out. And my point is, there's space and there's room for everyone at the table when it comes to doing the right thing for the right reason. What effect did it have on us? Well, I call a lot of hell across the hospital industry because I sort of brought the spotlight on hospitals. My response to that, good. You should have brought a lot of heat to the hospital industry because we're talking about what we get paid, not what we get paid for. I think that's really important. You know, in my first paramedic class, the first one I was in, well, I was only in one, but the one I was in had a nurse named Pat Smith. She was an RN. She's gone now. She was wonderful. I rode with her a lot at Guilford County. And, you know, she was a baccalaureate RN who came to paramedicine in the first 18 in North Carolina. And she worked as a medic for the rest of her career, and she was stellar. And everybody, even amongst the lugs that hung out in EMS in those days, they loved her. She fit right in because she chose to fit in. She was excellent, and she was a great caregiver. It's not a new concept to have educated people on a truck and to have people from outside, you know, just EMS on a truck or in a emergency department or in a clinical setting like community paramedicine. Lots of people fit there, and it's not the question necessarily of their exact background, it's the question of their fit to the mission at hand. If they're not dedicated to doing the right thing for the right reason at the right time and with cost in mind, not for themselves, but for the people that they're starting down the road for, you've got the wrong people in your agency and certainly the wrong people in your leadership. Because their responsibility, ethically, morally, common sense, and as an American or in any other nation they operate in, is to get this right for the people they serve. It's not a question of whether you should do that. It is a demand that you do that. It just won't work any other way. You know, it's hard work to do the right thing when other people are doing the easy thing. And you don't always succeed. I'd rather go down in a fight over the right thing than have a great life doing the wrong thing. Because there's going to be an accountability at some point for every one of us. Whether you're religious or not, I'll just tell you, in your life, there'll be an accountability for the things you do here in life. And it may just be to your children who look up and say, my mother, my father, my brother, my brother had an opportunity to fix this and they didn't. That may be the sole thing that happens in your life. That's pretty significant, I think. Now, I was thinking about hospitals, and I'm going to come full circle on this. I just made a list coming up here yesterday when I stopped for lunch. And I made a list of some of the teams we stood up during my time at Wake Med. Some of them were mine, some of them were not. You say, weren't those always there? No, they weren't always there. And think about this and think about where you all are and where EMS is. Tech teams, HR teams, recruitment teams, safety teams, rapid response nurses, sepsis teams, stroke teams, code stroke teams, cardiac teams, trauma teams, pediatric EM team, elder care teams, hazmat teams, EM teams, disaster teams, mental health teams, infectious control, quality control, EPIC computer teams, joint commission teams, public safety and tactical police teams within the hospital. Go on down the list. You think your day is complicated when somebody says we're going to talk about Agenda 2050? Get over yourself. This is simply an assignment. Comes down, whatever we agree on, it's what you're there for, is to lead in times and lead with a smile on your face. And if you disagree, show us the science to say it doesn't make sense. You don't get to say it doesn't feel right. Prove it. Just as I would ask somebody to say, you think it's going to help this patient by doing this? Prove it. Show us where the benefits are. It has to be measured. And not because it's EMS, but because it's healthcare. And in this era, our citizens, everyone that we touch, has the right to believe that the professionals that are taking care of them are taking responsibility for how it's done, why it's done, what it costs, and what the outcomes, highest probability of what those outcomes will be. We're not God. We don't make the final decision. But there are decisions we make as human beings that impact people across their entire lives, and there's probably no better example than in healthcare. And if you're on the edge of healthcare where the bad stuff happens, EMS is a pretty good place to be hanging out if you want to see it when it goes wrong on the front end. And you are asked the minute that alarm goes off to respond to somebody else's mess that maybe you didn't create. But like it or not, 24/7, 365, you're the one that's going to arrive and be responsible for that. And if you're the leader of a healthcare system or you're the leader of this country, or this department, or this division, it's your responsibility to make sure 24/7, 365, the people below you are operating at the state of the art, if not beyond that. Not an option. You say there are people with you that just aren't in line with that. I hope they enjoy their new job. Somewhere that doesn't matter, because there are plenty of jobs like that out in the world where you're just sort of messing around. Arcade place is a good example of that, just wasting money, in an arcade place. But I think if you're in this field, you have an oath to get it right. No different than a doctor or a nurse or someone running a big institution. It is your responsibility to get it right. The things I want to say just about healthcare overall, this was a list that I had put together not long ago in a presentation, and I want to end with this. And this was something I think is extremely important to say to you, because if you were dealing with me in a setting where I was running a health system, and if you were in Raleigh, North Carolina, or in parts of North Carolina, you would have been dealing with me on this issue in one way or another, because we were one of the bigger hospitals in the state. These are the things we have to think about there. So care needs to be affordable. People cannot afford this, including me and you. If you're paying insurance rates and you're paying part of that, you can't. The current system is trapped in silos. Fire service, third party, private. You watching the debates, early debates about how we're going to address economics, as the different groups have walked away from the discussion of what are we going to do collectively, and everybody's off in the corner saying what are we going to do for this field or this field or this field. Common trap. It's normal in healthcare. It's the wrong place to be. It has to be the question of what are we going to do about economics, so that we assure that what's right for the patient is done and paid for fairly, including to every provider who is certified and there directly for doing the right thing, whether it's fire, private service, public service, county, state, federal, has to be paid at a fair and reasonable amount of money, and they don't need to be giving away their services because they cannot deliver a first-class system, even if they're a volunteer department, and there are still some around. They have to be funded to do the job of protecting the public. We have to look at the question of, are we going to continue to fund episodic care, or are we going to make payments that are appropriately for keeping people from having episodic incidents that are preventable, such as diabetes, mental health, drug abuse? Go down the list. What's that have to do with EMS? How many drug overdose responses are you all going to today? And how many cities and counties and states are now have their personnel in body armor because of where you're going and why you're going there? Now, I wore body armor in the 70s, and before we really thought that stuff worked. I don't know, never got shot. But we used to say better hot than shot. But in today's world, in some pretty rough cities, including this city, you have to protect people because we failed to address some issues that now play out every 10 minutes in some EMS system, or probably every minute somewhere in the country. We have to address that. We have to create trust, context in every discussion we have, not about a department or an agency or a type agency, but context. Current healthcare is disorganized. What are we doing to add to that disorganization, or what are we doing to help fix it? It's an important question for leaders. We need real-time information, not retrospective reports of what happened on the call, but computer systems that are smart enough to watch the steps we're taking. The Epic system and other things like that are playing in that range right now, but the ability to watch what you're doing and to predict what the next step you do will be or should be, and to remind you of safety checks. Have you measured this? Have you measured that? It happens on aircraft every day. When something goes wrong, there's a warning light. Do our systems have heads-up warning lights for medics? And the ability to tell you, you just pulled a drug out that I've detected is in your hand. It doesn't go with the drug you just gave a few minutes ago. Why is it in your hand? It better be a different patient, would be the response. There are all types of things out there that should come to our field. The workflow and the work process has to be fixed. And part of that is adding people to our field that come from different areas, including computer geeks or people, the kids of today's generation, who actually know how to use this technology and come not having to learn it, but come knowing that like the back of their hand. We're going to teach them about EMS, not the stuff that's new. Many of us are learning the new in the reverse order. Education, 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 and education matters. If you're not in a system that is finding funding to send anyone and everyone in your agency off to the community college, off to a university, off to a master's program, off to a doctorate program, if they can earn their way there, that's not helping fund that in one way or another, you're doing a disservice to your folks, because you are not going to operate in a system that is advancing and very quickly pulling lowly educated people out of the system and elevating what the surgical tech looks like, what the nurse looks like, what the baccalaureate degreements that are coming, with master's degree becoming more and more common. If we continue to flood the street with people who don't have at least an associate degree, but more importantly, eventually some type of functional baccalaureate degree that may not be about, just the English and all the things that are part of a baccalaureate degree, but training beyond, including in the economics of healthcare and some of those things that their decisions impact, we're going to be left behind. I think about the question of education and say, have we restricted anyone based on their education with the ability to basically do CPR and learn CPR? And the answer is, with rare exceptions, we've said even kids can do it and get it right. When we first learned that, it was the miracle. It's not anymore. And the basic things we do in EMS today are, in essence, child's play to learn. There's a tremendous number of new things we have to learn that are a little more advanced, and they're going to be more difficult. It's not for everyone. And you see that with community paramedicine and the ability to think beyond the emergent situation. But everyone needs to help raise all around us in an educational status, not necessarily because it's a requirement, but because it will make them be in a better position. And for all the people who say the pay is low in EMS, it's tied to the question of education, my friends. In the absence of degrees, it's going to stay low, because that's the way the world works for the most part. It's like being a private. You're going to do a lot of work, but the pay's not so great, when you're in that role. And this isn't a question of let's go in it for the money, but why be in it and not take advantage of the opportunities to be rewarded for what you know and not just what you do? So I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today and to be in front of you. What you're doing is exceedingly important. I'm proud to have an opportunity to have been in or on the peripheral of this for a long time and to have known some of the greats. It's an honor to be here, to the Department of Transportation and to NMSA. I've idolized you for a lifetime. I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Atkinson. It is so nice to invite somebody, not provide them with the flexibility of saying what they want to say, having in the back of your mind some ideas about what you hope they say, and to have you nail it. Thank you so much. Since we started right after lunch, we want to give folks just a couple-minute opportunity to get up, stretch your legs, grab some water off to the side, visit the restrooms if you need to. We're going to start again with the next panel discussion at 2:45, so we'll see you in a little over 10 minutes.